Greetings to you all fellow travelers. This is Krotnip, welcoming you all back to the logbook of a simple lindworm traveler. Today we are going to be starting the Warcrow video season 2026, since the year has just concluded and the new one has begun. And this is very good a time, I feel, to take a analysis look at the entire catalog of so far released Northern Tribes models, now that we have every single unit mentioned in the source book released up to this point. Further source books and further releases are surely upcoming, since the game has done apparently well for Corvuspelli, but maybe entirely new unit analysis to follow later on. So what are we going to be doing today? Let's start off by discussing the obvious. We are playing a war game called Warcrow. The hint is in the name and it's not the bird part. And when playing war with our miniature toy soldiers, the idea often is to inflict damage against your opposing force, because that is one of the telltale signs of warfare. Then again, in most war games, annihilating your opponent's forces is not the be-all end-all of playing the game, and this is especially true in the case of Warcrow, where we have a complex and extremely engaging objective system, or rather two, in the form of our adventures being divided into scenarios and feats that the forces need to do their best to accomplish in order to secure victory. Inflicting damage upon the enemy and also being resistant enough against incoming attacks to still get the job done are the hallmarks of a good Warcrow company and a competent Warcrow player. So part of this competence and aim for competence on my part was attempting to design a very simple tool that would allow me to analyze the various offensive potentials held within the Northern Tribes faction without my rose-colored glasses on, or without my subjective feelings about different units on, or indeed the thoughts that other people have put forward online, for example, and see how effective these units actually are when they are at their best. So I decided to start off by simply calculating what's the effective damage output of the various Northern Tribes units when they are able to perform under optimal circumstances. Me being me, I couldn't then just stop there, but the next question was, how cost effectively are these models doing what they are doing? And from there it wasn't a long leap to also take a look at what are the best and quote-unquote least powerful combinations of characters and units purely from the damage infliction perspective. And as my tool started to take form, I decided that okay, this might be something that other people might find interesting and or entertaining. So I decided to polish up my work, and the result is the video you see before you. So we are going to be taking a three-pronged approach, as already stated. We are going to be taking a look at how much damage the various Northern Tribes units are capable of inflicting on average when fighting under optimal circumstances for them. How points effectively are these units dealing this maximum average effective damage, and what characters are best in what units when it comes to improving the expected damage output of the said units. Before we move on, however, I do need to stress the next point very carefully. I am not a mathematician. I am a wargaming enthusiast with a long and storied history in the craft, yes, but I am not big on mathematical models. I'm not particularly smart, I feel. So you have to take everything that you hear with a massive grain of salt. There may be some individual mistakes in my presentation where I may have calculated something wrong. That happens, especially to me, even though I have done my best to go over my math for a number of times before presenting it to you. Also, um, the analysis that I am doing here is extremely bare bones, and there are two reasons for this. Firstly, like I already said, I'm not that smart. I need to keep things simple so that I don't I don't get lost in the weeds and stop knowing what I'm talking about. And second, the following presentation and the tool that I constructed for my use isn't going to be or isn't supposed to be the be all end all of what's good and what's bad in Warcrow. It's simply meant to help determine how effective at dealing out damage our various units are and what circumstances they do require to get there. And then the onus is on each and every player to determine how much do they put stock on this ability to deal damage, how important is it to them, or is it just one small thing in a whole number of things that they value for each and every pick that they do when they design their company. So, with that caveat out of the way and some grains of salt ready to go, let's proceed to the actual presentation. Our very first stop is going to be a look at the bare bone basics. How effectively do the different Northern Tribes units deal damage, and what enablers do they require to get to their optimal average result? Here's the table that I ended up with when doing my analysis. As you can see, the weakest category of units are the ones that are on average dealing less than 3 effective points of damage when they perform their most optimal type of attack, and the very best performers are capable of inflicting 7 or even more successes worth of effective damage when they have a go at the enemy. The various levels are then spread between these two extremes, and just for the sake of fun, I have decided to name each category as you see there on the left. As a last thing before moving to the actual analysis, how this is going to work. During the next slides, I'm going to be filling out all the different rungs of this damage ladder that you see before you with the various units of the Northern Tribes. Next to each unit, I'm also going to be having a number of these colored stars that are supposed to represent with a one single look what are these special circumstances, if any, that are required in order for the unit to be able to go for the optimal average damage value that I have calculated for this analysis. If there is a blue star next to the unit, that means that we are talking about a ranged attack, for example, and there is a single case of a purple star, so a unit casting a ranged attack spell in order to deal their optimal amount of damage. Units with the red star need to be charging in order to get to the result that I have been using as a basis for this analysis, so effectively they are units with the raging keyword. Units that have a green star need to trigger an ability, or in some cases abilities, in order to get there, and the units with a yellow star are the ones that need to be pushing EA stressing for extra performance in order to get to their optimal offensive output levels. The stars are supposed to give you a quick info on how easy or how difficult it is to get the best value out of these units. And then you can make your own mind about whether it's worthwhile actually spending the resources nurturing the unit and developing its position until it can tick all the boxes needed for its optimal damage output. I trust all of you to be very much smart enough to know when this is worth it and when it's not, and if and when we as wargamers are not sure, then it's best to stop theorizing and start experimenting on the field. Okay, let's finally discuss the first category, the lowest level of damage dealers in the Northern Tribes, a category that I have named Camp Followers. My first instinct was to call these the rear echelon troops, but I don't think that the orcs and the varangs would use such a denotion, so here we go. The two first units in this category and the two lowest damage dealers in the entire faction are probably surprise to no one. The Tattooist and the Evoker are support troops who are more famous for the ways they find of supporting friendly troops beyond directly engaging with the enemy. The Evoker's Summon the Rock spell is especially maligned, as using it is extremely situational. You need to have gotten your Evoker near enough to enemies that you get to actually access the spell, and at the same time probably almost any other choice would be better when it comes to engaging the enemy. You need to look no further than the hegemony of Emperor Sig. Their Frostfire Herald isn't a popular pick in and off of himself, and his version of the magical missile is by far more powerful than the Evoker's. The Tattooist, then again, while weak when it comes to her offensive potential, is packing a ranged weapon with quite a decent range, and her scout ability can technically allow her to drop in and take a shot at enemy that was not expecting to get hit. So there is a theoretical possibility of using her to assassinate extremely weak enemy pieces. An opposing Evoker would come to mind, for example, but other than that, she is strictly a support piece. The final unit in this category gave me no small amount of trouble. I love Tundra Marauders, they are my absolute favorite Varang unit, and I play them in almost every list. They also do inflict quite a decent damage when I get to use them quite often, and their primary damage driver is not their moderate attack roll, but the fact that they are one of the few Northern Tribes units capable of attacking twice in an activation. This is because the Tundra Marauders have access to the Snow Leopard Tattoo ability, which allows them to place and attack, and as it's an ability, short action skill, they then get to perform another attack afterwards if they so choose, and if they are still engaged with an enemy that they can hit. But I am not smart enough, unfortunately, to model that second attack into this analysis, because we would, I think, need to know the defensive metrics of the enemy unit in question, so that we would calculate how effective or how ineffective the second attack is going to be beyond what the unit would normally be doing, and hence I have just taken the easy way out, the coward's way out, and I have only calculated a single attack by the Tundra Marauders for this analysis. But keep in mind that this is doing a disservice to a unit that is actually quite potentially devastating when they get to double attack a lightweight enemy unit that's not very well geared towards sustained melee combat. The second lowest category I have named grunts because it includes our basic grunt unit in the Orc Hunters, and there is clearly some Warcraft inspiration going on here in the world of Lindworm also. As you can see, the second lowest category is quite densely packed. We have the already mentioned standard basic Orc Hunters, as well as a ranged attack unit by the Varrank in the form of the Varrank Ice Archers. The Orc Hunters don't need any specific enablers in order to get to their average optimal damage, and the same goes for the Rock Troll, since these units share exactly the same attack roll, even down to the double special switch that they are rolling. Obviously the Rock Troll has a shove switch, but that's neither here or there for the purposes of this analysis. The Ice Archers are capable of inflicting more damage on average than the Orc Hunters, even though they are firing their arrows at range 15, but this requires the enemy to already be slowed so that they can access their blue arrows passive to inflict an automatic wound. Same kinda goes for Celica, but really not that much, because even though she also requires the enemy to be slowed in order to access her hollow success switch that allows her to inflict her maximum average damage, she can first inflict the slowed state by herself and then apply the extra damaging switch effects, so she is very self-sufficient in this regard. As was the case with the Tundra Marauders, I felt that I could not model in a good way the secondary attacks caused by Celica's Bow of Claws ability, so her offensive output here is simply relying on her own ranged attack and the ranged attack switches that she has access to. The highest two performers in this category are Orcish characters. One is the venerable 15-point Wisemane, the support option we all know have known from the very beginning, as this old orc was already present in the Winds from the North, the first product to be released into the war game of Warcrow. Contender is one of the earlier additions to the faction also. She is an officer who likes to take charge of a unit of usually orcs, but in some War Alliance lists also Varranks, and she is not terrible at fighting on her own either. But not really someone that you would bring for her solo fighting capabilities most of the time either. The middling performers of the damage dealing analysis have also been named in a rather orcish style as raiders. This category includes two characters that are usually more thought of as support characters for units rather than as stone cold killers on their own. And that is, of course, Lotta and the Dark Master that I'm talking about. Both are capable of leaving a mark on enemies, especially enemies that are not looking to engage orcish officers in single combat. And the Dark Master, as an ambusher, should be more than capable of engaging such weaker targets if the battle has matured long enough for him to find an attack angle. But that's not necessarily what you are bringing these orcs for. Lotta is a terribly powerful squad leader that adds several different bonuses to a unit she is joining. More on that later. So you will usually be finding her leading a unit rather than fighting solo. And the Dark Master's primary effect bonus for the company is probably going to be this sharp perception ability that safeguards the entire company, at least the unengaged elements of it, that is, against enemy scout and ambusher strikes. The Dark Master is also capable of turning a box standard unit of orc hunters into a unit of really difficult to engage and deal with scouts that can then threaten enemy flanks, objectives and rear areas. So that's probably where you'll be seeing them most often. The last two entries in this category, the two units that found their way into this category, are the types of units that you would usually characterize as offensively minded and as damage dealers, and that is the Varank Skin Changers and the Orc Warg Riders. I think it's somewhat unfortunate for both of these units that they find themselves in the middle of the pack when it comes to actual damage dealt, even under optimal circumstances, because both of these units are semi-expensive two-member units whose main role is to be a offensive threat. Neither is that great at capturing objectives. The Warg Riders suffer from a lack of cheap ways to buff their conquest value, and also their bloodlust makes them highly unreliable as flanking elements that can play the objective game, whereas the Skin Changers suffer from a conquest value of 0. So if these units aren't that great at taking objectives, and they should be getting into the faces of the enemy, it's not very great for them that they are only middling when it comes to their damage output now, is it? Then again, the Warg Riders are extremely fast and they have a tremendous charge distance. I think it's the highest charge distance in the game as of right now. And the Skin Changers are capable of being reinforced by a variety of characters, and they can also scout, which is an important aspect of their game. But as damage dealers, unfortunately, both of these units fall a bit short. There's no beating around the bush. The second highest tier of damage dealers in the Northern Tribes I have named Line Breakers, and this category includes 4 characters. Here we find our 2 unnamed high commands in the Wrathmane and the Mounted Wrathmane. Their offensive profiles are extremely similar. Both are rolling a good amount of offensive dice. They are raging, they have elite, and they are capable of improving their offense by pushing. The Mounted Wrathmane comes slightly ahead direct damage wise, and they are also by far the quicker of the 2, whereas the on foot Wrathmane is cheaper and they have a wider selection of units that they are capable of joining, even if it's not that much wider. The other 2 characters in this tier are the Prime Warrior and Escort the Executioner. Escort the Executioner is a Varank support character who turns into an officer when they join a unit of Varank infantry. Their claim to fame is their ability to join the Warcraft Riders and also their ability to provide elite keyword in addition to other benefits to the unit they join. But if Escol chooses to detach or fight alone from the get-go, he is actually capable of hitting quite hard. While his offensive dice set and her double special switch are nothing special when it comes to the Northern Tribes forces, he does have access to a extremely powerful hollow success switch that allows him to inflict 2 automatic wounds per hollow success rolled. So that is what actually propels our bold Varang leader to this high place in our listing of damage dealers. Prime Warrior, on the other hand, requires little introduction, I feel. She is extremely beloved by the Northern Tribes commanders and probably somewhat notorious among our opponents. The Prime Warrior is usually seen as a support element thanks to her ability to provide the Orcish forces with extra activations via experience and range, and stress management via Orc Warrior's Honor. But she also has the Fearsome Combatant passive ability, which allows her to add yellow dice to her attack rolls based on the stress she has on her. And in addition, she is immune to disarmed, slowed, and vulnerable states, which means that the Prime Warrior is actually quite dangerous when engaging enemies that to lesser or greater extent rely on their ability to disarm or cause vulnerable on the unit that they are fighting, since she's going to be ignoring these effects altogether. It's finally time then to move to the Lords of War tier. Let's take a look at the top average damage dealers in the Northern Tribes faction. The only unit made up of several models that has made its way into this category is obviously going to be the much feared, much respected Orc Battle-Scarred. The Orc Battle-Scarred are capable of inflicting a tremendous amount of damage even before you attach any characters to the unit to improve their performance. However, they do have to trigger quite a bunch of different enablers in order to get there. Firstly, they want to be charging thanks to their raging keyword. They have quite a weakish push modifier that adds an effective damage to their attack roll, and they also have the ability Relentless. If the enemy they are attacking is suffering from any negative states, then they get to add yet another success to their roll. So you do have to work a bit in order to get the battle scar there, but if you do, the damage they can wreak is simply terrifying. Speaking of terrifying, on the exact same amount of damage inflicted on average, at least by my calculations, comes in my boy, the Hersir. It's quite unbelievable that a 25-point unnamed character model is capable of inflicting such terrifying damage, and he isn't even required to charge in order to get there. While the Hersir's offensive dice set does look quite moderate from the get-go, one has to remember that they not only have access to elite, but they also have the ability to switch double specials for block mitigation. They are also capable of pushing for extra performance, and they have access to the extremely powerful and cool Tattoo of Storkrike ability that allows them to suffer a wound as per the rules of Berserker Rage to add yet 2 more successes or any symbols that they want for that matter into their roll. And this makes a solo Hersir that has wounds left to spend an extremely dangerous a foe to tango with. The next 4 characters in this category should be pretty self-explanatory. We have Alborg and Alvard Icebear, the 2 main leaders of the entire faction in the story. These are extremely high cost, high commands that provide other abilities beyond their raw fighting prowess to their company, but when push comes to shove, they are also very much capable of duking it out with the toughest of enemies, especially if they are the one to land the first blow. A special mention here goes to Alborg because they are capable of not only inflicting damage upon the enemy, but they are also surprisingly adept at inflicting stress upon the enemy, which can be a shorter route into incapacitating a dangerous foe than simply whacking them apart with his Sword of the Sun. Forever joined at the hip, it would seem, we have Njord the Merciless next to his Jarl, and it's quite damning that their damage output is so very similar. See the video that I did on the topic on this channel. It has to be said though that our Hersir from Brynjalmar has to jump through more hoops in order to get to his absolute maximum damage level, but at the same time he is 20 points less and he is not a high command. He's capable of joining a variety of units and check out my video for more details. The absolute highest damage dealer under the optimal circumstances in the faction is obviously going to be the Orc Revenant. Yes, there are quite some hoops to jump through to get there, obviously. He wants to get wounded badly, but not killed, because he gets an automatic success for his attack rolls per wound suffered so far. And also he wants to be pushing for extra performance as well as fighting a large or cavalry enemy unit in order to get the full bonuses. But if he gets there, he's one of the few units in the entire game that can reliably put forward double-digit amount of damage per attack spent. Now that we are armed with the base knowledge of how much damage we can expect our various units to deal on average under circumstances ideal to them, let's try and calculate how cost effectively these units are capable of inflicting said damage. One has to remember that average point cost per point of damage inflicted, especially in such a theoretical case as this one, is very imperfect metric on how good a unit is. For example, if we had a unit that costed only 1 point and would only cause an average of 1 point of damage, that would give us an excellent points cost per point of average damage dealt value, but at the same time it would be terribly activation inefficient to try and actually use such an unit. So take a huge grain of salt with each entry in this category. This is supposed to give us some idea of how over effective or under effective some of these units are, but it's not the whole truth by any stretch of the imagination. As you can see, we are paying more than 8 points per point of damage on some units, and the cheapest cost is between 3 and 4 points per point of damage inflicted. Without further delay, let's get into analyzing. If we take a look at the units populating the lowest tier of cost per average point of damage inflicted, there is probably only one surprise entry. The Rock Troll the Evoker and Celica are very much support elements whose main focus isn't necessarily dealing direct damage against the enemy. And as already stated earlier, our skirmisher unit in the Thunder Marauders suffers from the fact that their potential second attack that is not modeled into this analysis. Quite damningly, however, the shock infantry unit of the Varang side of the Northern Tribes coin in the skin changers also find themselves in this lowest category. So a unit that's not actually bringing anything special to the field beyond their high damage potential when it comes to measuring them against other options we have access to, actually doesn't deal all that much damage when compared to its high points cost. So that's really unfortunate and really damning for the skin changers. If we then move on to the second lowest level, we are going to be seeing a bit more diverse a selection of units. Firstly, we have a couple of moderate damage ranged units in the Tattooist and in the Ice Archers. Neither of these units is going to blow the enemy out of the water in and of themselves, but at the same time they are cheap enough that they get to experience not the worst points per potential point of damage inflicted relationship. There are also two high commands, named high commands in this category, in Alborg and Alvard the Ice Bear. Both of these war leaders are powerful fighters in and of themselves, but they are also extremely expensive. So you want to be leaning on other things that they bring to your company beyond their fighting prowess. And this is probably usually why you are bringing someone like Alborg. You want to maybe access War Alliance, and you definitely want to access the Varg and the Crow. Unfortunately, Alvard isn't quite that stellar at supporting his company. He brings War Alliance, but that's pretty much it. We also find the Dark Master in this category. This assassin is supposed to be going after softer targets, and also he's kind of a tech option for our company, as already stated previously, so his cost to damage ratio is to be expected. A bit like was the case with the skin changers, it feels really unfortunate that the Warc Riders find themselves at this same level. A unit that's whose calling card is dealing damage isn't all that cost effective at dealing damage after all. The middle level of damage dealers per point spent is quite crowded also. Here you can find infantry units, frontline infantry units that is, such as the Orc Hunters and the Orc Battles Guard, couple of squad leader type characters in the Contender and in Lotta, and the two high commands without names, the Mounted Wrathmane and the Wrathmane. Interestingly enough, even though the Mounted Wrathmane has slightly higher damage output on average than his on foot counterpart, the cost difference means that actually the on foot Wrathmane is more cost efficient when it comes to putting out this damage. There are some pretty familiar faces in the second highest category. Here we have two Varang characters in Escold the Executioner and Njord the Merciless. Both are capable of putting out quite an excellent amount of damage, even when we compare to their 30 point and 40 points cost respectively. The Prime Warrior also gets to inhabit this lofty category. There are three models in the top category and each for a bit of a different reason. Firstly, we have the Orc Wisemane, who gets placed here because of his 15-point cost that allows him to rather cost effectively hand out his decent to moderate amount of damage. Hersir is to be found here because he's part of the highest branch of damage dealers from our earlier part of the analysis, and 25-point cost also helps him get to this lofty A position. Finally, we have the Orc Revenant, who simply cannot be competed with when it comes to how points effectively a unit is capable of dealing damage under the optimal circumstances. Now with the entire points per point of damage section complete, let's highlight a few things, shall we? Firstly, now you see highlighted on the graph all of our units made up of several models. And as you can see, actually our best value for damage dealing per point spent units are the Orc Hunters and the Battle Scarred. The Warg Riders and the Ice Archers are stuck on a lower category, and the Tundra Marauders and Skin Changers are in the lowest category down there. As you can see, none of our units actually climb to the top two categories, but that's quite understandable. Firstly, we have access to some tremendously powerful characters, and also when we add characters to the units, that changes the mathematics of both the damage inflicted and also the cost per point of damage inflicted. More on that later. If we take a look at the top 6 models found in the top 2 categories, 5 of these are actually models that are capable of joining units, which is extremely interesting and quite powerful. This opens up the possibility of escorting these characters to the enemy via attaching them into units, maybe running them inside those units to reap in the benefits that the characters provide, and then later on detaching the character to go on their own strike mission once the unit is full of stress maybe. So that's something that I would be very much looking to do and being mindful of when constructing my company. The high command options aren't terribly cost effective when it comes to handing out pure damage. As you can see, our named high commands are in the second lowest tier and our unnamed high commands in the middle tier. So this reinforces the idea that you are bringing the high commands for their leadership abilities and or other tactical benefits that they can provide, not solely for the damage that they can inflict. Okay, now that we have gone through the damage that our different units are capable of inflicting when flying solo, so to speak, and we have also analyzed the points cost to damage relationship in these cases, let's move on to the last phase of this analysis, and let's take a look at how the various characters that are capable of joining units provide value in the various combinations that they are capable of creating. The caveats from before are still very much in effect. There might be some mistakes when it comes to the mathematics of what I'm presenting, but I'm hoping that the general idea is more or less correct. Let's forge on. On this slide, I have compiled the bottom 4 performers when it comes to increasing the offensive performance of the various units that the characters are capable of joining. Let's go through the list. As the worst performer, we have our high command character Alborg. Alborg simply brings an automatic success to a unit's melee attack roll, but thanks to the fact that he brings War Alliance, he's capable of joining any Orc or Varrank infantry unit in order to give access to this low level bonus. The next worst when it comes to improving offensive performance is the Orc Dark Master. The only unit that the Dark Master is capable of joining is the Orc Hunters, and he provides them with an additional red dice of offensive power. While this red dice is decent, it's not great, but then again, you really aren't attaching the Dark Master in order to make a offensive powerhouse of a unit. Rather, you're creating a scouting unit that's extremely difficult to engage and that can threaten enemy objectives and backline troops extremely credibly. Next up on our listing comes the Prime Warrior. The Prime Warrior adds an automatic success as well as a red dice to the offensive dice set of a unit that they are joining. That is melee offensive dice set, obviously. This turns out to mean in practice a bit over 2 points of extra damage on average. But for the Battle Scarred, this number is slightly higher thanks to the fact that they have access to a hollow success switch that inflicts an automatic wound, and the red dice has a single facing with a hollow success on it. The last character on this page is going to be the Orc Wisemane. The Wisemane adds an automatic success to the melee attack roll of any unit that they are joining, and he's also capable of providing them with a red dice by pushing for extra performance. He also provides their unit with the command skill, the Voice of Experience, that allows the unit to spend a command token to fix a die from their roll. This may be attack or defense. Voice of Experience is a rare command skill in that you can spam it. EA, you can trigger it several times per roll if you have command tokens to spend. Hence the star next to the +3, because I have calculated this additional damage to include the automatic success, pushing for that red dice, and then using Voice of Experience to fix that red dice into a double success. Obviously, each instance of using Voice of Experience on a red dice will net you 0.875 extra successes worth of average damage, and the effect is lessened on orange dice and slightly lessened on a yellow dice. So that's something to keep in mind. But then again, I think it's quite rare for the Northern Tribes player to be willing to burn through their stack of command tokens in order to spam this ability, unless the situation is critical or the game is about to draw to a close anyway. The first character in the mid-tier territory when it comes to improving the offensive performance of the Northern Tribes units is the Orc Contender. While the Orc Contender does not add any additional switch-based abilities that would increase the offensive output of the unit that she joins, she does add an automatic success to every attack roll, and she grants a push modifier to her unit that not only adds yet another automatic success but also grants an additional yellow dice to the attack roll. Hence, most of the units that she's going to be joining are able to reap the benefits of 2.375 extra damage when pushing. Note that since the skin changers are able to leverage hollow special symbols as auto wounds, they actually get a bit more bang for your buck out of this yellow dice, and the battle scarred get even more because yellow dice has access to 2 hollow success facings that the battle scarred can then switch for automatic wounds. I have also left a star marking behind every single number due to the fact that the contender has access to the Defiant Leader command skill that's capable of imposing the automatic vulnerable state upon the enemy and thus helping the attached unit deal more damage. Also keep in mind that the Tundra Marauders can potentially leverage the contenders as well as every other character's offensive output increase twice per activation if they are able to perform a double attack. Next up we have Alvard, who's only capable of joining the skin changers, and while he does provide quite a hefty amount of extra damage for them, unfortunately in the current competitive environment I don't see this combination as viable. As seems to be fated, Njord and Alvard are forever attached at the hip, with Njord also providing extra 3 points of damage to a unit that he joins, given that he has to access Berserker Rage in order to get there. Then again, Njord has access to a more wide selection of units that he can join, and also as denoted by the black star symbol next to the number, he also grants their joined unit access to the Hersir from Brynjalmar ability, which allows the unit to re-roll a single dice after charging, potentially after a charge attack reroll, which also adds additional offensive output. Interestingly enough, Berserker Rage also allows a ranged unit to add a success to their ranged attack roll, and hence Njord joining a unit of Ice Archers provides also additional offensive power to their ranged attacks or additional slow inducing switch triggers if they so instead prefer. The best performer in the mid-tier category is going to be Escolt the Executioner. I am doubtful that I got everything right. I had to redo this math a few times thanks to the fact that Escolt not only adds his switch ability and his automatic symbols to his unit's attack rolls, but he also turns them into elite. But I'm comfortable with the idea that I more or less got there. Quite interestingly enough, the unit to get most value out of Escold being attached to them would seem to be the standard Orc Hunters. They are rolling a bunch of dice and they get to access the double special switch ability, and thanks to Elite all the symbols that they are rolling are going to be relevant in one way or another. Then again, you do require War Alliance in order to access this ability, and in this combination Escold remains a support unit, so he does not count as one of the Orc Hunters when calculating the number of models in the unit for their performance, and also he gets killed off as the second last model in the unit in the very least, so maybe charge him out before that happens. Also, you are foregoing the use of the natural switch ability of the Orc Hunters in order to power the extra damage inflicting double special switch. At the other end of the spectrum, the battle scarred are actually getting quite a poor performance boost out of Escold, since they are rolling a dice set that doesn't include that many potential special symbols, and also they already are packing a switch ability that essentially makes them elite when it comes to hollow success symbols. Before advancing to the top 3 performers, let's take a look at some special cases. I think we might as well talk about both of the characters capable of joining the Warcriders in the same go, since as you can see, for the purposes of this analysis, they are quite similar. Both are capable of adding about 2.5 damage to the average result of a Warcriders unit. Yes, the Mounted Wrath main has to lean on a push modifier to get there, but at the same time he's an officer, which is quite beneficial for the unit as a whole. Then again, Escold, while being a support character, makes the Warcriders elite, so there's that. At the end of the day, whether you choose to attach one or the other to your Warcriders, you are about doubling the price of the unit, so you're making quite a hefty an investment. And as you can see, this ends up reducing the points per point of damage inflicted on average by quite a lot. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't attach these characters. And I'm not saying you shouldn't run Warcriders. I own 2 units and I desperately want to make them work. But at the same time, this part of the analysis as well as the pure damage output part would suggest that the Warcriders may not be the most effective damage dealers out there when compared to some of the other options we have available, and I think making the most out of one's Warcriders will hinge on making use of their other benefits beyond their raw damage output. The next model on our list here is going to be Celica, and Celica really gave me a lot of trouble when it came to analyzing the additional performance she brings. I chose to go with the extremely conservative route of only depicting the automatic success and the orange dice that she adds to her unit in the graph you see before you, but in truth this is only half of the story, so to speak, because she adds the ability for the unit of ice archers she has joined to perform a second ranged attack on their activation once per round. This secondary attack not only is way more reliably going to trigger Blue Arrow's Rain, as already stated earlier, but it also allows the unit to double tap something and really wipe stuff off the field. But again, I was not smart enough to calculate this additional attacks performance, because there is the second time you would need to apply the defense roll of the enemy, so I chose to leave it out. But suffice to say that a unit of ice archers with Celica attached is a terrifying ranged offensive damage dealer, and the points per point of damage inflicted goes way down, unlike is the case with the rest of the models on this page. And that leads us to the top 3 performance increasers of the Northern Tribes characters, and those familiar with the subject matter should already know who they are. Third on our listing when it comes to the best performance increasers in the Northern Tribes characters and the units that they can accompany is going to be the Orc Wrath main. This is a character that has placed consistently surprisingly high on our analysis so far, and he posts his best performance of yet in this category. The most famous or most effective, I would argue, plays for the Wrath main is with the basic Orc Hunters, since he effectively makes the unit pseudo-elite by granting them not only his passive offensive and defensive and psychological and command skill abilities, improvements, but also because he provides the unit with both a hollow success and a hollow special switch, allowing them to make use of every single symbol on their offensive dice. Getting to the 4 points of extra damage does require pushing, however, so there's that. But it also has to be said that out of all the push modifiers that units are granting, the Wrath mains is one of the more powerful ones, because for a point of stress, on the offensive you get not only a red dice but also a success. When joining a unit of Battle Scarred, you are getting some diminishing returns from your Wrath main, because as already stated, the unit already has a natural auto wounding hollow success switch ability. But then again, the Wrath main's Wrath Roar that disarms and frightens an enemy unit within range automatically can be used to trigger the Relentless ability on the Battle Scarred, so there's that extra performance enhancer to access. On the second podium in the silver spot, it's no one else but Hersir himself. The Hersir provides a unit they join with an automatic success and another automatic success potential via a push modifier, the Berserker Rage, which is usually going to translate into yet another success, and also a double special switch that inflicts or rather reduces the blocks of the enemy, hence increasing the effective damage output. Beyond that, obviously, he also provides a hollow success disarm trigger, so that's great even if it doesn't actually increase the damage inflicted that we are analyzing here. As you can see, the best recipients of the attention of the Hersir seem to be the Orc Hunters and the Varang Skin Changers. The units in question are rolling identical offensive dice sets. Both can make use of the double special switch, even though in the case of the Orc Hunters you are foregoing the use of their own natural double special switch in this case. Other units can also obviously benefit. Getting to access these abilities, these increased offensive performance characteristics twice on the Tantrum Marauders is something that I love to make good use of, and they are also an excellent way of escorting the Hersir into a charged range of something that needs average 7 points of damage introduced to them in a one fell swoop. Obviously, the Hersir can also increase the performance of the Battle Scarred or the Ice Archers, and in the case of the latter one, Berserker Rage can once again be used for ranged attacks also, but these probably aren't going to be the first combinations that you are planning on when fielding a Hersir. Obviously, the first place is going to be going to the team leader of team leaders in Lotta. Lotta provides a flat 5 extra points of damage for most units when fighting under the optimal circumstances, and this increases to 6 with the Skin Changers. The logic behind this number is, or the calculus behind this number is that Lotta adds an automatic success to any unit that she joins, and she has a push modifier that adds yet another automatic success, as well as a hollow special switch that the skin changers can turn then into an automatic wound. In addition, if Lotta uses her Move Her Asses ability, as denoted by the green star there, her unit gains an additional automatic success added to their roll, and they gain raging. So if they charge, that's yet another one. And if and when they win a round of combat, the passive Cat o' Nine Tails comes into play, inflicting yet another automatic wound upon the enemy. Then again, I would like to make note of the fact that, as you can see, the performance increase or the difference of performance increase between the Hersir and Lotta isn't actually all that dramatic when it comes to the offensive power, and the Hersir is not reliant on charging under any circumstances nor using command tokens in order to access his high extra offensive output. So there is situationally times when actually Hersir is more capable of the two when it comes to enhancing the unit's offensive power. Then again, you have to remember that Lotta adds that all-important block symbol on the defense, and the defensive side of the coin is something that the Hersir does nothing for, but more on that in the relevant videos. This slide was a very last minute addition, so if there are any mistakes, please forgive me. Right before we close this analysis piece, I wanted to take a one last stop to see the forest and stop inspecting each tree for a minute. I think the risk when analyzing something too carefully is that you lose the sight of the bigger picture, and hence I wanted to set up a bunch of potential unit combinations, wanting to have each unit presented once in this damage line and having a different character join each of them every time. And these are the combinations, example combinations that I came up with. If we start from the left of your screen, a unit of Varang Ice Archers led by Celica will set you back 55 points. This unit will on average deal a bit over 5 points of ranged damage if they are able to trigger Blue Arrow's Rain, and thanks to Celica they are able to fire twice, once per round, if they are able to take a point of stress to do so. At exactly the same points cost, you could also be recruiting a unit of Tundra Marauders and an attached Hersir. This unit is also capable of attacking twice under the right circumstances per activation, and each attack, when pushing for extra performance and leveraging Berserker Rage, should cause a bit less than 7 points of damage on average. If we then move on to the units that deal a bit over 7 points of damage per average attack, we are looking at a charging and pushing for extra performance unit of Warcriders that's led by a mounted Wrathmane, or a unit of Orc Hunters that's led by a on-foot Wrathmane, also pushing for extra performance. As you can see, for 25 points less, the humble Orc Hunters and the unnamed Wrathmane deal as much damage on average as a fully kitted out unit of Warcriders with their high command character attached, so there's that. At the high end of the spectrum, at little less than 10 points of damage, comes in a unit of Battlescarred that's pushing twice for extra performance, once for their own modifier and once for the contender's modifier, and also leveraging their raging bonus as well as relentless. And the highest potential for average damage in our faction out of these choices that I set up for you here is in a unit of Varang skin changers led by Lotta. When the unit is charging, using move your asses and pushing for extra performance. This last point makes me especially happy because during this analysis I have been forced, unfortunately, to be pretty down on the skin changers, but it's really great to see that there is at least that one extremely worthwhile combination out there, and hey, that's enough. That means that the skin changers do have their place in Northern Tribes lists at least every now and then. And with that we are finally done. The damage is dealt, at least for the time being. I didn't realize this analysis would turn out to such a monster of a video, but hey, now it's done. Hopefully at least some of you find it helpful or in the very least somewhat entertaining. Hope to see you again as soon as possible. Luck has not been on my side when it comes to that of late, but hey, no one knows what's coming up going forward now, do we? Safe travels everyone, goodbye for now.